I was 8 when my parents decided they were done with me. Looking back, even before I turned 8, I knew I was a burden. They had me young, early 20s, just starting their careers. Watching them struggle to build a life while raising me probably fueled their resentment, though I only realized that much later. Back then, I just knew they didn't seem to like me very much. I spent most of those 8 years trying to win them over, but nothing worked. The emotional neglect was constant. The only time they acted differently was around friends and family, putting on a show for everyone else. They'd intimidate me into keeping quiet, and I'd obey, terrified of making them hate me even more. Unsurprisingly, my mental and emotional health took a nosedive. I started acting out at school, becoming a real problem child. I don't blame myself, though. If they had treated me better, I wouldn't have acted out like that. They tried everything, scolding, grounding, whatever they could, to get me under control when the teachers started complaining. But I was determined to misbehave, convinced it was the only way to get their attention. Then, around my 8th birthday, my mom got pregnant again. For the first time in what felt like forever, they seemed genuinely happy. They announced it at my birthday party, and I remember feeling confused about what it meant for me. The answer came a few weeks later, when I saw my mom packing my bags. My dad sat me down and said I was being sent to live with my aunt because I wasn't doing well, and they wanted the best for me. I was young, but not stupid. They were getting rid of me. Now that they had a new baby on the way, I was being replaced. Naturally, I was upset. I threw tantrums, desperate to stay in my home with my friends. If I'm honest, I didn't even want to leave my parents. No matter how they treated me, they were still my parents. But they didn't care about my tantrums. They shipped me off to my aunt's place anyway. She lived out of state, and I was miserable the entire journey. I pleaded with them, promising to improve my grades and behavior if they'd just let me stay. But their minds were made up. It hadn't occurred to me then that maybe it wasn't about my grades or behavior at all. Maybe they would have resented me regardless. When we got to my aunt's, they stayed for a few days to help me settle in. I was still upset, but my aunt made the transition easier. She was the kindest, most loving person I knew. She was my dad's older sister, and she'd never married or had kids of her own. Maybe that's why she agreed to raise me when all her other siblings had left for different careers. She could see how upset I was, and she reassured me that everything would be okay, that I'd like it there once I settled in. Her words helped. After a couple of days, when my parents finally left, I broke down. My aunt was there for me then, too. She kept calling my parents, trying to get them to talk to me, but they rarely answered. I cried for weeks, and my aunt was there through it all. Gradually, I started to feel better. After a couple of months, I stopped missing my parents altogether. Living with her was so much better. I helped out on the farm, went to school, and surprisingly, I wasn't doing too badly. I made friends, the schoolwork seemed manageable, and the teachers liked me. My life improved drastically after being sent away. Even though we saw each other on holidays, I realized I was better off without them. They had told my aunt they were sending me to her because I was troubled and needed a change of environment. But after a few months, I told her the truth about how they had treated me. I thanked her for taking me in. After that, even her behavior towards them changed. She became colder and more distant. We saw them at family events a few times after that. But in the past 12 years, we haven't interacted much. They don't seem to care how I'm doing, and I'm happier without them. My sister is around 12 now, and I don't really have a relationship with her. From what I've heard, she's not the nicest kid. Even at 12, she has a nasty attitude and doesn't know how to speak to people politely. Apparently, she's a troublemaker at school too, but that's my parents' problem, not mine. Me, I'm doing pretty well. I'm in college now, getting a business degree so I can take over my aunt's farm someday. The college is close enough that I can go home every weekend, which is convenient. Last week, while I was home, my parents called my aunt. They didn't have my number, I guess. After almost 12 years, I had a proper conversation with them. It wasn't a good one. They started by saying how proud they were of me, how well I was doing. Then they dropped the bomb. They wanted another shot at parenting. They wanted me to keep in touch and come back to live with them after college. I was floored. Why? I asked, completely bewildered. They told me it was because of my sister. She was apparently worse than I ever was, and it was shameful for them. They wanted me to reconnect and prove to people that they could raise good kids. So, the real reason they wanted me back was to use me as a prop, to show off to their friends and family that they weren't incapable of raising decent children. It was ridiculous. And what's crazier is that they actually expected me to entertain the idea. I told them flat out that I wasn't coming back. I wasn't going to help them prove anything to anyone. They had nothing to do with me, and I had nothing to do with them. My life had improved dramatically since I moved in with my aunt. They were the problem, not their kids. Besides, it would be a lie to say they raised me. My aunt did that. I wasn't going to let them take credit for it. Most people in our family knew my aunt was the one taking care of me anyway, but my parents planned on lying, saying they'd kept in touch and visited frequently over the past 12 years. That wasn't true either. They threw a tantrum about how they had supported me and my aunt, but they had only done the bare minimum. They sent a check every month that barely covered anything. My aunt had to pay for most things out of her own pocket, and she did it without complaint. Now they were acting like they were doing us a huge favor. They whined about how my sister had turned out to be a failure and how humiliating it was for them. I was supposed to help them out because they were my parents, after all. That's when I lost it. I told them they were anything but my parents. I didn't even consider them family anymore. They needed to leave me and my aunt alone. She was the only family I had. It felt good to finally say it. A couple of days ago, I posted about this whole thing online, and most people agreed I wasn't in the wrong. It helped put things into perspective. Honestly, the only reason I was doubting myself was because my parents were bombarding me with messages, trying to guilt me into apologizing and coming back. They made it seem like I'd been intentionally cruel. I didn't think I had been, though. I was just being honest. I hadn't cursed at them or anything, but after reading the comments and stuff, I realized they were just manipulating me. They wanted me to come home so they could parade me around like a trophy. I blocked them everywhere, but they kept texting me from different numbers and accounts. It was annoying. I talked to my aunt about it, and she told me to ignore them. She said if I knew I was right, I had nothing to feel sorry about. She also talked to some other family members to figure out why my parents were so desperate to prove they were good parents. That's how she found out about the incident at my sister's 12th birthday party. Apparently, my sister was caught smoking, and when my parents tried to take the cigarette away, she threw a massive tantrum and made my mom cry. That's when my mom's sister, my other aunt, and some other family members told my parents that it was their fault their 12-year-old daughter had access to cigarettes in the first place. They said if my parents had been more proactive, it wouldn't have happened. Apparently, they had spoiled my sister rotten. They never said no to her, gave her tons of pocket money, and let her do whatever she wanted with it. They didn't even bother to supervise. My sister could do whatever she wanted because she had them wrapped around her finger. The cigarette incident made their friends and family judge them. Now they were desperate to prove they weren't bad parents, and they wanted to use me to do it. It was pathetic. Everyone knew my aunt raised me. Even the people my aunt talked to said they disapproved of my parents sending me away when I was struggling. They said that's not how you treat your kids. You help them, not abandon them. They had even told my parents to bring me back after my sister was born so we could grow up together. But my parents brushed them off, saying I was happier with my aunt, and they knew what was best for me. It's mind-boggling how my parents can only think about themselves. They told me my sister was a failure, writing her off like it was nothing. It scares me because she's only 12. She needs guidance and counseling, not to be discarded. She's the kid they sent me away for, the one they wanted to save all their resources for, their time, money, energy. And this is how they're treating her? It would be easy to hate my sister. She got everything I never did: love, care, affection, money, time. But honestly, I just feel bad for her. My parents somehow managed to fail both their children. That's the most shocking part of this whole situation. I just hope they stop calling and texting. I don't want to talk to them, especially after everything I've learned. If they try to guilt me again, they're going to get an earful. It's been a couple of days since my last update, and like I said, if my parents tried to guilt trip me again, they'd get an earful. And they did. A couple of hours ago, they called me from another new number. As soon as I picked up, They started in on how I owed them an apology and needed to come home. I was already in a bad mood, and that call just made things worse. I lost it. I yelled at them, telling them I wasn't going to apologize for anything because I was telling the truth. They weren't my parents. They hadn't done anything to earn that title. If anyone was my family, it was my aunt. She was the one who raised me. They'd had nothing to do with me for the past 12 years, and even before that, all they did was neglect me. If they couldn't handle the truth, that was their problem. They needed to do some soul-searching instead of harassing me and trying to make me feel bad for something I had every right to feel. They tried to interrupt, saying that while my aunt might have raised me, they were the ones who supported us financially. I told them the money they sent barely covered any of my expenses, and my aunt had to pay for everything else herself. It was meaningless. Besides, they wouldn't have had to send any child support if they had kept me in the first place. They needed to stop acting like they were doing us a huge favor by sending that measly check. It was the bare minimum they could do after dumping their son on her. And it was out of the goodness of her heart that she never spoke about it to other people and ruined their reputation, even though she easily could have. They needed to stop talking about the money they spent because money isn't everything. That was clearly a lesson they should have learned after the incident at my sister's birthday party. They kept throwing money at their youngest daughter, and look where that landed them. She was a spoiled brat. They were the ones calling her a failure, but the real failures were them. They had failed both of us. When I said that, they instantly got defensive and told me I had no idea what I was talking about, that my sister was happy, and the incident at her birthday was just a one-time thing. But happy 12-year-olds don't just start smoking because they can. I told them I was pretty sure they were just saying that to convince themselves, because I definitely wasn't convinced. They were doing the exact same thing to her that they did to me, just the opposite. They failed me by not giving me any attention, and they were failing her by giving her too much money and spoiling her rotten. That was obvious, even though I'd never even met her. The fact that they felt the need to reach out to me to prove to other people that they were good parents showed how little they cared about actually being good parents. There's a huge difference between the two. I guess that was too much truth for them to handle. They started screaming at me, cursing me out, and telling me I had no idea what I was talking about. Judging by how defensive they got, I'd say I hit the nail on the head. We argued for a few more minutes, then they told me they were glad they sent me away all those years ago because I was clearly not good enough to be their son. They were happy they chose to stay with their daughter instead. Then they hung up, probably thinking their parting words would hurt me. But I didn't care. I was just happy I'd won the argument. They wouldn't have resorted to such low blows otherwise. Now I'm hoping they'll think twice before picking fights with me or calling me again. The only thing I do regret is that I don't think I'll be able to do anything about the situation with my sister. It's a pity because I know she could do well if she was just taken out of that environment my parents created. But you win some, you lose some. It's been a week since I last spoke to my parents. They haven't bothered me since that last phone call, which is good. From what I hear, they've been telling everyone in the family that the cigarette incident with my sister was a one-time thing, that she's never done it before, and it will never happen again. But no one's buying it. People know something's going on with her, and even if that was the first time she smoked, there's no telling what else she's done. My parents are the only ones responsible. It's obvious this happened because of their lack of supervision and discipline. I don't usually like judging people without knowing them, but I know my parents, and they deserve to be judged. I mean, what kind of people get rid of one kid when they're expecting another? My parents? That's who. I'm just glad the rest of my family is finally realizing how messed up they are and starting to keep their distance. My aunt has even started telling people the truth about why they left me with her. It wasn't because I was a troubled kid. It was because they wanted to focus on their new kid and didn't want me around. And even though I was acting out, it wasn't really my fault. It was because of how my parents treated me. If it hadn't been, I wouldn't have done so well after moving in with my aunt. She kept all this to herself for the past 12 years because she didn't want to ruin their reputation. But now she feels they deserve it. They had it coming. It was only out of decency that we hadn't spoken up about it before. People are already wary of my parents because of how defensive and in denial they are about failing as parents. Our version of what happened just confirms that they're the real villains in this story. They don't deserve either of us, not me, and definitely not my sister. Some people might think we're going overboard, that we don't need to kick them while they're down. But honestly, none of this would be happening if they hadn't called me up and asked me to help them pretend to be good parents. They brought this on themselves. And there's another big update. My grandparents, my mom's parents, have decided to fight for custody of my sister. I've kept in touch with most of my family, even after my parents sent me away, so my grandparents and I have a normal relationship. When they called me a couple of days ago to ask about my relationship with my parents back then, I decided to tell them the truth. They said they were glad I finally spoke up. For years, they believed my parents had a good reason to send me away, but now they realize there's no good reason to send your own child away. They apologized for not seeing the truth sooner, but I told them it was fine. No one could have known without being told that I wasn't being treated right. Apparently, after the incident with my sister, they'd been hearing rumors from other family members about how I was treated, since my aunt finally started speaking up. They realized my parents hadn't changed a bit, and were still more concerned with appearances than actually being there for their kids. So they decided to fight for custody of my sister, so she could be raised differently. I think it's the right thing to do. My life got so much better after I left my parents, and I think it will be the same for her. Maybe in a different way, but it will help her. They've already managed to get temporary custody, and she seems kind of indifferent to the change, which means that in time, she'll probably feel better about it. My grandparents are confident they'll get full custody soon, but they'll make sure my parents have visitation rights. The best thing about all this is that my sister is trying to build a relationship with me. We've been talking on the phone for the past few days. She seems happy to talk to me. I know that for the past couple of years our parents told her not to talk to me because I was a bad influence. But now she's finally reaching out. Maybe we can build a good relationship after all. I'm hopeful. It's been a couple of weeks since my last post, and things have been relatively quiet. My parents haven't tried to contact me, and honestly, that's a relief. It seems like they finally realized that I'm not going to play their game. They can't manipulate me into being their pawn anymore. My sister is adjusting well to living with my grandparents. She's enrolled in a new school, and from what I hear, she's doing much better. She's even joined the basketball team, something she always wanted to do, but my parents never allowed. It warms my heart to see her thriving in an environment where she's supported and encouraged. We talk on the phone regularly, and I'm getting to know her as a person, not just as the sister my parents replaced me with. She's funny, smart, and surprisingly insightful. I think she's going to be okay. My aunt is happy about this whole situation too. She's relieved that my sister is out of that toxic environment and that I'm finally free from my parents' attempts to control me. She says it's like a weight has been lifted from her shoulders. As for my parents, well, they're still trying to save face. They tell anyone who will listen that they're happy for my sister, that they just want what's best for her. But their actions speak louder than words. They rarely visit her, and when they do, it's always awkward and strained. I think they're starting to realize the consequences of their actions. They've lost both their children, not because of anything we did, but because of their own selfishness and inability to be decent parents. It's a sad situation, but sometimes people have to learn the hard way. I'm focusing on my own life now. I'm enjoying college, and I'm excited about the future. I have a loving aunt, a newfound relationship with my sister, and a whole life ahead of me, free from the burden of my parents' expectations. This whole experience has taught me a lot about family, forgiveness, and the importance of standing up for yourself. It's been a difficult journey, but I've come out stronger on the other side. And for that, I'm grateful. Story 2. I sacrificed my ideal college to support my father's company after he assured me it would be mine. Later on, though, Dad labeled me a loser and handed it to my brother. They are now pleading for assistance after becoming bankrupt. I was accepted to my ideal institution at the age of 18. I put a lot of effort into achieving that, nor was it just any school. For what I wanted to accomplish, this institution has one of the greatest programs in the nation. I had put a lot of effort into being accepted. Sincerely, I was ecstatic by my efforts to strike a balance between extracurricular activities and grades. I could see my future developing before me, and it seemed like all of my hard work was finally paying off. However, my dad pulled me down for a serious conversation just before I was about to accept my offer. A few years prior, He had launched a modest firm that was suffering but not failing. He felt overpowered. Despite working long hours, he was unable to keep up with the growth he was attempting to promote. I was aware that he had been working long hours to keep it afloat. He admitted to me that he was in over his head and was no longer able to handle things alone. He promised that the company would eventually be mine if I stayed and assisted him in expanding it. I might ultimately pass it on to my own children, and it would be our legacy. I was caught between two possibilities, but he made it seem like this amazing one. On the one hand, my entire future was prearranged, including college internships and, finally, my ideal position in my field of choice. However, I was unable to get rid of the guilt. This was my father, who had always supported me and who needed my help. In addition, the prospect of one day controlling a company did seem alluring. I reasoned that perhaps I could assist him for a time, pick up some tips, and then take over as he had promised. Days passed as I considered it. I ultimately declined my admission to college, albeit it wasn't an easy choice. It wasn't because I didn't want to attend, but rather because I sincerely thought I could contribute to the company's expansion and perhaps, just possibly, create something more significant for my future than a degree could provide. I had no intention of abandoning my aspirations. I was simply going in a different direction. That's what I told myself anyhow. I gave the business my all for the following 8 years. After a difficult initial few years, the company began to expand. I put in a lot of work. I'm referring to weekends, long hours, and everything else. Since I was certain that this business would be my future, I essentially gave up my whole social life. In the end, I was more than simply a worker. I was essentially managing the business with my father. Gradually, the company began to expand. We were making more money, gaining more clients, and things were going well. I believed that all of my hard work would be rewarded when I saw the results of my effort. I thought this was going to be my future, which is why I was so involved. My father never stopped telling me that I will eventually own this business. For a long time, all of it convinced me that staying with my dad in the company was the best choice. Then, abruptly, around 2 years ago, my younger brother, let's call him James, who is 24 years old, decided he no longer liked his tech job. He said that although he had been doing rather well for himself, it wasn't gratifying and that he wanted to work for the family company instead. The golden kid had always been him. Even though he didn't do anything, my parents couldn't stop talking about how intelligent and gifted he was. I should have anticipated difficulty when he said that he wanted to join the family business since IT was no longer meaningful for him. However, I initially believed it might not be so horrible. I mean, whatever had occurred in the past was behind us now that we were both adults. I even entertained the idea that the company may achieve even greater success if we collaborated. Well, I was completely mistaken. My dad began treating James as if he were the next Steve Jobs as soon as he entered the company. All of my contributions and ideas were abruptly disregarded, and James's suggestions, even some that I had been working on for years, were all miraculously wonderful. My father began to assign him additional tasks and give him credit for the job I've been doing. I felt as though I had vanished, and that was painful. After all of the work I had put into creating this business, they were sidelining me. When my dad summoned me into his office one day, it all came to a head. He advised me that because James had the idea to grow the company, I should take a back seat and let him take center stage. I was astonished. I had sacrificed my whole young adult life, my friends, and education for this company, and now I was being asked to move aside as if I were nothing. Naturally, I declined, but my father made it plain that he no longer wanted me to be engaged. He advised me to try something else, and even had the audacity to admit that he felt bad about giving a failure like me a chance. That's how it is. I had left. My dad didn't give me a warning or offer me an apology. I just lost my job at the company I helped start from the beginning. I understood that I had to go on, even though I was sad. I moved out of my parents' house, got a little apartment, and began looking for work. However, after operating a firm for years, I came to the conclusion that I didn't want to work for anybody else. I thus launched my own consultancy business. At first, it was difficult, but I persisted. I applied all of the knowledge I had accumulated over the years to support the expansion and success of small enterprises. After a year, my business flourished. I soon had more money than I had ever made working for my dad after landing a few major clients. Since I also branched out into social media, the company began to receive notice from the local press. In any case, I was highlighted as one of the industry's emerging stars in a local newspaper one day. Receiving some acknowledgement for my efforts at last was an incredible feeling. Would you not be aware of it? After that, my dad contacted me. He abruptly contacted me after we hadn't spoken for a year. He was all lovely and sorry. He acknowledged his error and expressed his pride in me. He claimed to have read the story on my accomplishment. I thanked him uncomfortably, not really knowing what to say. He attempted to carry on chit-chatting, but I could see he had phoned me solely to ask for something. I then asked him directly what he desired. At first, he attempted to claim it was nothing, but then he revealed to me that James was having trouble running the company. It seems that he was not as brilliant as my father believed. Whoa, it's shocking. Then my father asked me if I could return and assist him, or at least let my brother in on part of my accomplishment. It would be the greatest understatement of the century to say that I was angry. I'm shocked that they had the audacity to beg for my assistance now, after everything they've done to me. The father who expelled me and the brother who replaced me now asked me to salvage their sinking ship. I informed him that since he tossed me away, I had created my own success from the ground up, and that I would never share it with anybody, least of all James. I made it very apparent to him that I would not assist him in cleaning up the mess he had created. I didn't know anything about him or James, and after the way they treated me, I most definitely wasn't going to help them. That talk with my dad was a few days ago, and to be honest, I'm not sure whether I'm being petty. After giving it some thought, I'm starting to regret the way I spoke to my father. I can't get rid of my resentment at the way they treated me, even though I feel like I should simply go on. In light of what they did to me, I would propose to refuse to assist them. One update. Hello everyone. I appreciate all of the help and guidance in the comments. I thought I should give you everyone an update even though I didn't anticipate this to become that popular. Since I'm frequently asked about the job I did for my dad's company, I'll start there before discussing the most recent events. As a result, the company was somewhat antiquated when I began working for my dad. They had no internet presence at all, not even a legitimate website. In addition, many tasks were being completed by hand. Redesigning the company's whole online appearance was one of my first actions. I created a brand new website from the ground up, created social media profiles, and even worked on online advertisements, all of which increased sales significantly. In addition, I assisted in supply chain optimization, improved supplier negotiations, and identified methods of cost reduction without compromising quality. Additionally, I formed some important alliances with other nearby companies, which significantly increased our sales. My parents never really gave me credit, though, in spite of everything. He always thought of me as his helper. It seemed as though I was only assisting with minor duties and not the one spearheading the expansion of the business. He would never believe or behave as though everything I accomplished was the reason for our notable gain in revenues, even when it was simply the result of good fortune or timing. Even though it was annoying, I endured it because I thought that one day, as you had promised, I would own the company. In addition, there were several inquiries concerning my brother James. In a nutshell, he has always been our family's golden kid. He never really knew where he wanted to go in life. He never stayed with anything. He always tried a little bit of everything. He hardly worked at all. And for some reason, my folks continued to give him a lot of praise. It's clear that my brother took great pride in all of their compliments and would do all in his power to make me feel bad. As a youngster, he would frequently bully me before persuading our parents that I was at fault. Normal sibling fare. However, he never outgrew it. He basically pretended to be the boss when he first started working for the firm. My dad would enjoy it when he pitched the exact same thing I said after he persuaded him that whatever I was saying was incorrect. Yes, he is that type of person. In any case, with all that has transpired, I am now at peace with the fact that our relationship hasn't been the best. Following my most recent chat with my father, he continued to call. He insisted on meeting. He stated we needed to chat and that it was crucial. After a time, I chose to ignore him, but my curiosity finally won out. I needed to know what my dad wanted, but as many of you said in the comments, it would probably be best if I avoided my brother and dad. There was a part of me that hoped he had come to his senses. I wasn't expecting a complete apology or anything, but I did think he may acknowledge that he was mistaken, at least in part. When I arrived at the cafe where we were meeting, I consented to meet up with my dad. James was there too, and I wasn't pleased. My brother evidently chose to accompany me, even though I had assumed it would just be my dad and myself. The meeting was heated from the beginning. My father wasted no time in disparaging my accomplishments. In essence, he told me that I should be thankful for my business's success, since I wouldn't have the necessary abilities without him. He also added that I owe the family because working with him taught me everything. After everything I did to help him expand his firm while receiving no credit, hearing that was quite upsetting. My dad was much more irritated than usual when I told him that. I saw that James began to panic, so I spent some time pacing back and forth with my dad. I mean, he acknowledged that he has been having difficulties ever since I left. Yes, I was aware that was why we had ever met that day. He admitted to me that he didn't know how to manage a company, and it seems that things have become pretty terrible. Just when I thought my brother was at least decent, he started accusing me of leaving them. He claimed that none of this would have occurred if I had stayed traditional. I told him to be honest with me for a moment, and essentially sneered at him. Our father's decision that James was superior to me was the sole reason I even quit the firm. Dad admitted to me that I was a failure, and that he was sorry he had allowed me to run the company. I had no responsibility whatsoever. James then disclosed that the company was in danger of going bankrupt. When I walked out, my mouth fell open. In just 1 year, the firm was flourishing. I was shocked that things had gone so awful, so quick. According to James, our father had been keeping the real financial documents from him. It turns out that shortly after my brother joined the company, the business began to collapse. My dad thought that things would suddenly turn around, so he was hiding it the entire time. They obviously didn't. The company is currently barely surviving, and they are heavily indebted. It seems that my brother didn't know how to keep up the transactions I set up, so many of them either fell through or weren't renewed. When the quality declined, they lost business partners and suppliers, and their consumer base began to decline. Everything about it was a catastrophe. By the conclusion of the conference, they were essentially pleading with me to return, not to manage the company, mind you, but to assist my brother in maintaining his position of authority. I believe that the only emotion I will ever experience around them is astonishment. Did they really think that I would step in, rescue the day, and allow my brother to claim the glory once more after everything that transpired? Sincerely, I don't see how I could ever go back, even though I assured them I would give it some thought. A part of me feels sorry for my dad and the situation they're in, which is why I'm so conflicted. However, I am aware that I would simply be re-entering the same poisonous scenario. I'll keep you all updated, but I haven't decided what I'll do yet. Once again, I appreciate your guidance and your patience with me during this. You won't realize how much it helps. Update 2. I haven't posted in 2 weeks, and to be honest, things are just getting worse. I made the decision to contact my dad yesterday. I wanted to view the company's financial documents, not because I had changed my mind about aiding him. I wasn't comfortable with this whole situation for some reason. I needed to discover the extent of my brother's damage to the business. After investing 8 years of my life, blood, sweat, and tears, in expanding the business, I was still undecided about helping them. That business was my baby, and I was devastated that they destroyed it so quickly. I wanted to know if the business could be saved if I decided to assist them. I reasoned that verifying everything through the records was the least I could do. I believe my eyes literally popped out of my skull in shock when I finally saw the records, but perhaps it would also provide me with some closure. Payroll, vendor payments, and other costs appear to be normal at first. However, when I dug deeper, I came across a number of odd transactions. Furthermore, they weren't only sporadic additional fees. All of the recurring purchases were recorded as business expenses, even though they had nothing to do with the company. I'm referring to lavish personal shopping, upscale hotel accommodations, expensive gadgets, and elegant dinners attended by no clients. Nor was it an instance of someone inadvertently combining personal and commercial accounts. It was clear that this was deliberate because these accusations were present so often. Whoever did it was consuming the company's funds as if they were their own piggy bank. I couldn't understand why my dad would waste corporate funds in such a manner. My father had always been absurdly frugal with money and expenditures. He just would never spend company funds like way. For years, he has operated the company without any problems. Then it dawned on me. It wasn't his father, but James, his favorite kid and current CEO of the company. I phoned James right away to find out whether he was using business funds for personal needs. I thought he would at least express some remorse or shame, but instead he readily acknowledged that he was the one using company funds for pleasure. He even admitted to me that he had no regrets. He said that because of my employment at the firm, I had been able to enjoy luxury for 8 years, and now it was his turn to do the same. It seemed unbelievable to me that he believed I was working on my dad's business while living in luxury. In actuality, I was only getting 4 hours of sleep every day at most. I went immediately to my dad to tell him what I had learned after that phone conversation. I assured him that James was responsible for everything, even any pointless purchases and dubious transactions. I assumed he would be shocked, or at the very least, upset with my brother for putting the company in danger. However, I shouldn't have anticipated James to behave that way because he is my dad's favorite kid, and he is innocent. Rather of becoming angry, my father stood up for my brother. He claimed that my brother's outbursts were only the result of his stress following my departure from the firm. Spending the money was apparently my brother's method of dealing with everything, because he had been under so much pressure to handle everything on his own. What I was hearing was unbelievable. My father was attempting to use my departure as an excuse for my brother's extravagant spending. I made a significant effort to control my emotions. I politely told my father that his statements were nonsensical. I explained to him that my brother's stress did not excuse him from destroying the company's finances and endangering it. However, my dad became more irate the more I said. He said that I was being too harsh on my brother and that I simply didn't get it. I knew then that no matter what I said, I would never be able to reach him. My father was adamant that my brother was the victim and I was the issue. It was like speaking to a stone wall when you spoke to him. So I went out. However, it didn't stop there. My phone was inundated with alerts when I got up this morning. All of them were direct messages, emails, and texts from friends and clients. The majority of them wanted to know if what they had read in the news was accurate. I didn't know what they were discussing. I went online and saw that my dad had done an interview with the local news station. Throughout the interview, my name was dragged into the muck by him. He said that when the family business most needed me, I left it. He gave the impression that I was a self-centered, pampered brat who carelessly abandoned them. He held me responsible for every problem the business encountered. Conveniently, he omitted the bit where he handed my brother the business he promised me and preferred his work over mine. Additionally, James squandered corporate funds on non-business-related expenses, which ultimately caused the company to fail. There are no words to express how I feel at the moment. I'm in pain. I'm upset. I'm just lost, to be honest. When my dad went to the press to criticize me in that way, I believed I had reached a place where I was fine with everything that occurred to me. I'm at a completely new level of betrayal and humiliation, and I'm at a loss on what to do. This interview has jeopardized all of the hard work I've put into developing a positive reputation. I keep wondering if this would affect my business in the future, and how many people will believe what my dad said. I've always been proud of what I've accomplished, but it sickens me to think that my own family may bring it all tumbling down. Even though I am aware that I have no influence over what other people think, dealing with this is still difficult. I'm trapped. There is a part of me that wants to defend myself and correct the record. However, I also question if it's worth it. It won't improve my reputation at all, and will just turn into drama for viewers to watch. I am unsure of my next steps, but I am certain that I cannot continue to let my family to drag me down. I've gone too far to allow them to destroy what I've accomplished. Please share your most outrageous and inventive ideas with me to correct the situation. I would really appreciate some guidance on what to do. I appreciate you reading. If you've read this far, I'll make sure to let you know when it's resolved. Hey everyone, this is the third update. My previous update was almost 7 months ago, and a lot has transpired since then. I want to start by expressing my gratitude to everyone who left a remark on one of my earlier postings. I honestly laughed aloud at a few of the suggestions after reading them all. I can't express how much I thank all of you for making a difficult period much more bearable. Let's go on to the update. I chose to speak with a lawyer after reading the comments and heeding some of your suggestions. I decided it was time to face the situation head-on, particularly in light of what my father had done during that interview. If I chose to sue my dad for slander and defamation, the lawyer said I had a good case. My business and reputation were suffering as a result of him openly tarnishing my name. I don't know. It felt weird at first to sue my own father. For days, I truly struggled with it. I had no desire to file a lawsuit against my own father. Yes, I am aware that he has deceived me several times. But did I really have the right to sue him because of that? However, I finally thought of what I believed to be a good compromise. I thus contacted my father and requested a meeting. I didn't explain the situation to him. All I wanted was to get him there so we could have a conversation. I didn't give him a chance to speak when we first met. I explained that he had a decision to make, which is why I had requested him to see me. I offered him 2 choices. Either he transfers the company to me, or I file a defamation and slander lawsuit against him. There are no conditions. Furthermore, he and my brother are unrelated to it. He continued accusing me of hurting his business, so I told him that. This was his opportunity to demonstrate it. He had 2 options: either let me keep it and see whether I really destroyed it, or face legal action and shut down his business. It would be an understatement to say that he was astonished. After a brief period of silence, he erupted into a furious outburst. He began screaming that I was attempting to steal his business and that I was being irrational. But throughout, I maintained my composure and serious demeanor. I informed him that if he didn't respond within 3 days, I would proceed with the case. After that, I decided to leave since I could no longer stand his ranting at me. He phoned me 3 days later and promised to sign the business over. It didn't make him pleased at all. He was rather explicit that he didn't want to give it to me. However, I suppose he came to the realization that he had little options. When my brother learned, however, he went utterly crazy. I was accused of stealing his firm, and he threw a fit. To be honest, though, I stopped caring at that point. Both of them had to live with the decisions they had made. To put it mildly, the last few months have been quite busy. It has been difficult to operate both my own consulting business and my dad's former company, but I've been doing well. It's been challenging, particularly in light of the negative publicity and the harm my brother caused, but I'm gradually getting better. I've been repairing the damage they caused and mending client connections. Even so, it's not a quick success. The direction of things is correct. And guess what? I was asked to provide my perspective by the same local news station where my dad had that terrible interview. In the interview, I made the decision to act honorably. I didn't give away too much or blame my father. I just stated that I felt it would be better to quit my dad's company because I was having a difficult time and wasn't making much of an impact. But after seeing my dad's interview, I knew I had to return. I felt bad for my dad and wanted to assist, so I took over the company. In fact, it worked very well for me. People began to perceive me as the larger person, which in fact improved the company's reputation. Regarding my brother and father, I haven't spoken to them since the entire situation. I've been totally disconnected by them. They have blocked me on all platforms and won't reply to my messages. It hurts. I'm not going to lie. Knowing that they would rather throw me out of their life than confront truth and that they won't acknowledge their mistakes hurts. However, I also feel a strange sense of relief. The fact that I no longer have to put up with their drama makes me very happy. In all honesty, it seems as though karma has finally come full circle for them. I suppose that's it. Although it has been a difficult trip, I am pleased with my progress. The company is gradually recovering, and my consultancy business is doing quite well. Although I have a lot on my plate, at least I am now in charge of my own life. Once again, I want to thank everyone who helped me along the way and offered advice. I will always be thankful to you all for your unimaginable assistance. Story 3. The wife traveled to the UK to attend a wedding. A stranger sent me an email with pictures of her earrings that were discovered in the pocket of another man. She is now leaving our kids behind and relocating there permanently. Hi everyone, my age is 47. Enjoy a happy and comfortable existence. I genuinely love my job. I'm fortunate with 3 amazing kids, mates F6, F4, and a beautiful wife, Emily, 45, and I reside in a great area. Emily and I have always seemed like a perfect fit, but a recent email I got has made me quite uneasy and given me cause for concern. Because she spent so much time in the UK, Emily sought a PhD while she was there, from 2010 to 2015. In order to preserve the numerous strong friendships she formed, she has made it a point to visit every few years. She spent 3 weeks in the United Kingdom last August to attend a close friend's wedding. After giving it some thought, we decided that it would be better for me and the kids to stay at home because I couldn't take that much time off from work, and the kids wouldn't likely like it. After Emily left, she came back as planned, and our lives resumed as usual. I got an email at my work email account last week. It was purportedly from Emily's friend's wife. I'll refer to him as Jake M40. This woman claims that she has good grounds to believe that Jake and Emily had an affair. She enumerated her concerns, pointing out that Jake had brought Emily up from the airport, stayed at her hotel for a long period, and that they often went out to eat together by themselves. She also supplied photos of a lipstick smear on a shirt and my wife's jewelry, which she claimed to have discovered in Jake's pockets when washing the laundry. I can identify the color as one Emily frequently wears. For the purpose of conciseness, she provided a few more pieces of evidence. I'm not going to list them here. All of this was a lot to take in, and for a time I tried to dismiss it since I felt it was a joke, but it kept coming back to me. I recall that my wife would speak with all of her friends there before to her trip. She most likely chatted with Jake the most. However, I'm not sure whether this email is affecting my recall. I also know that Emily never liked Jake's wife, but I'm not sure why. Although I've never done it before, I'm inclined to hack Emily's phone and social media accounts right now. But I'm aware that if I searched and found nothing, I'd feel awful. Furthermore, wouldn't she simply erase everything if I started acting suspiciously, fearing that I would be discovered? I'm not sure how to proceed. Therefore, I would appreciate any advice on how to handle this. Right now, the only solution I can think of is to confront her about her phone and then want to see it right away so she won't have time to erase anything. However, a part of me believes that this would aggravate her and maybe indicate nothing at all. I neglected to incorporate the edit. These earrings are no longer owned by my wife. She claimed to have misplaced them when I questioned her about why she wasn't wearing them when she got back. OP responded to comments. The other proof is listed in the commenter's information. It's best to have all the information as you know it. Ignore the concision. I choose to exclude it because it isn't as reliable as the other information she provided. However, here is the other proof. She said that Jake would visit Emily or speak with her on the phone each day she was there. She said that whenever Jake saw Emily on the phone, he would either leave the room or hastily hang up. She said that they always found a reason to touch each other, seemingly not even trying to disguise how much physical contact they would have. They would talk a lot about the past. She even mentioned the way they would exchange glances. Show your wife the email from this individual and ask the question in a comment or to NTA. I suppose I will. OOP. I hope that it proves to be nothing. Update 1. October 18th, 2024. I contacted Emily a few hours after I shared my initial post. She validated my suspicions. She says she can no longer live a lie since she is in love with Jake. She says she can't be with us any longer, but she still insists she loves me and the kids. She said that she was holding off on telling me and the kids until a better moment. This has apparently been going on since March, with Emily meeting Jake in secret and him periodically traveling out here. We are divorcing each other. Emily will shortly be relocating to the UK. In August, she affirmed that she went to a job interview in addition to the wedding, and she will begin work in the new year. She has sought for a British visa already. After she moves, she intends to live with Jake. Regarding custody, Emily is willingly giving up her right to exclusive custody. The children will remain in Canada with me because she does not want to move them. A part of me respects the choice, but another part of me is shocked at how effortlessly she's leaving. I would want to raise my kids without her financial influence, but she wants to pay child support. Regardless of how I feel, the court will probably demand for support. According to what I've been informed, Emily is also requesting structured visiting privileges, which will probably be granted given the circumstances. Even in cases when one parent is moving abroad, the court often favors agreements that provide both parents to continue having contact with the children. Although the specifics are still being worked out by the attorneys, it appears that she will receive visitation during vacations and school breaks, with the potential for virtual calls in between. I've been trying to make things as friendly as possible, and Emily seems to agree with my requests more when I'm cooperative. We are also talking about our home's future. Emily has stated that she wants to split the money from the sale of the property. However, I find it difficult to give up a family home. Since it was purchased during our marriage, I doubt I have many options. As of right moment, no decisions have been taken. Our attorneys are still sorting out the specifics. Considering the circumstances, it could take a long time for us to come to an agreement. I've been told not to make any significant financial decisions in the interim. Even while I would really prefer to stay here with the kids, I realize that selling is probably unavoidable. Jake has flown here to visit with Emily, who is now staying at an Airbnb. At some time soon, they intend to visit the United Kingdom. According to my attorney, infidelity is not a reason for preferential treatment in terms of child custody or property split. As a result, unless marital finances are directly involved, it won't affect how assets are distributed. Money from Emily's personal account was probably utilized, unless it can be demonstrated that she funded the affair with our combined funds. This won't likely change anything in court. Eleanor, Jake's soon-to-be ex-wife, and I have been in constant contact, mostly via email, but more lately, we have had a few phone conversations. Eleanor said she felt bad about telling me about the affair, and that perhaps my marriage would have been saved if she hadn't. I informed her that, in my opinion, divorce was unavoidable due to the seriousness of the problem, and I would prefer not to be kept in the dark about something so important. She even provided me with messages and other proof of their connection. However, from a legal standpoint, it is irrelevant because Emily is publicly acknowledging the affair. I've heard a lot about Jake from Eleanor as well. She apparently has had enough of his cheating on her for the third time. She claims that there is no possibility of reconciliation this time, and he shows no desire in making an effort. She said Emily isn't fighting for custody because Jake has no desire to raise children who aren't biologically his. Given that she and Jake both want full custody of their children and disagree on a number of other matters, Eleanor's divorce is probably going to be far more involved and drawn out than mine. I haven't had time to think about it all. I can state with clarity that I have nothing left for Emily, even if the last 2 weeks have seemed like a blur in every manner. The ease with which she is abandoning our children is the reason, not the fact that she violated our marriage. I never imagined that I could be so hateful of someone I had loved. It's an odd sensation. The children are the most difficult aspect of all of this. It's been really challenging to explain the situation to my 2 youngest girls, who have begun to inquire as to why their mother isn't around as much these days. My oldest has gotten quieter and more reclusive as a result of appearing to grasp a bit better. My family has been really supportive thus far, which is a blessing. I've been reading to my kids every night the many heartfelt letters they've received from some of their cousins. One of my brothers and his wife drove up to visit over the weekend, and all of my siblings have sent gifts for the children. Even so, my sister-in-law made a ton of food, some of which is still frozen. While I was meeting with my lawyer, they also kept the kids occupied. In addition, my other siblings have volunteered to visit and watch the children whenever I need them. In addition, my 78-year-old mother has already arranged to visit with us for 2 weeks in November to assist with household chores, and my parents have been phoning every day to see how we are doing. My family's combined efforts have made this experience much more tolerable, and I sincerely appreciate all of their help. To everyone who urged me to talk to Emily following my previous post, thank you. Eleanor's message kept bothering me, even though I was tempted to ignore it. Your counsel inspired me to take action. Since Emily has proven to be dishonest, I'm confident that her notion of a better time was just when it would be least inconvenient for both her and Jake. November 13, 2024 is the second update. Consider this more of an opportunity to vent a few things now that I've had more time to think about my circumstances than an update. I am aware that during our marriage, Emily frequently visited the UK. I'm certain she's lying when she says that her romance with Jake just started in March 2024. There is a good chance that this has been happening for years. It has been evident to me and everyone else that she had been preparing this for a while because of how much she had already planned by the time I confronted her. In actuality, she had some legal paperwork ready just a few days after our altercation. Jake, who arrived in Canada soon after I faced Emily, also made it apparent that they had arranged for her to give me an approximate early notice of this day. It seems likely that Emily was ready and was only waiting for favorable circumstances to present themselves. She had, after all, long ago filed for her visa, found employment, valued her vehicle, our family car, though it was registered in her name, and shipped personal belongings to the UK with Jake when he was on covert trips. Okay. I feel like I'm just touching the surface and don't really know how far this goes, but I'm blind to it. Emily would never tell me it's death, though. Not only that, but even before I confronted her, Emily had already started communicating with her attorney. Considering all of this, one can't help but question whether she got her job sooner than she claimed, maybe to give the impression that her actions were less planned. Two of Emily's pals have now contacted out to express astonishment and displeasure by her conduct. Janet, one of them, said that another acquaintance had told her that Emily had begun seeing her divorce attorney as early as late August or early September. Additionally, throughout Jake's visits, this other buddy supported my belief that Emily had been shipping some of her possessions to the UK. I may be driving myself a bit crazy, but some things jump out since I've been having trouble sleeping and mentally reliving the last few months. For instance, Emily had 3 full luggage with her when she traveled to the UK for the wedding in August. I didn't question her when she informed me that they were full of gifts for her pals, despite the fact that at the time it looked a little excessive. After her vacation, I brought her up from the airport and saw that the baggage were oddly light. I may presume that she brought a number of her personal belongings to the UK, in addition to the job interviews she claimed to attend, which would account for the fact that she has appeared to be wearing less of her clothes since returning. In spite of this, I feel entirely responsible for being caught off guard. In retrospect, I see that I disregarded several warning indications, and I suppose I didn't believe Emily was capable of such a thing. I question whether this result might have been completely prevented if I had previously been more firm and watchful. The worst part of it is that my kids are currently having to cope with the fallout from my foolishness and ignorance. My wife had almost established a new life while I fiddled with my thumbs. The majority of my acquaintances are now aware of my split with Emily. Friends and co-workers who noticed my wedding band was missing have been informed of my decision to cease wearing it. Given Emily's travel habits and propensity for lying, a close friend of mine and several people who privately contacted me on Reddit have recommended that I get DNA testing done on the kids. However, I can see their point of view. I'm never going to do this. I would never give my kids to another man. That won't alter. So far, life without Emily has been challenging. Getting the kids dressed and getting out the door has made mornings a stressful scramble. I spend almost half the week barely making it to work on time. To be honest, juggling all the additional parenting responsibilities I have during the day is taxing. In addition to everything else, I'm already dreading the chore of shoveling our wide driveway once the snow starts to fall at our current house. The tension is also being felt by the children. They despise my constant busyness and don't especially enjoy the food I make most days. Knowing that when we're battling here is really annoying. Emily and Jake recently left for a leisurely trip around Europe. Our communication has decreased, and I was just recently made aware of these changes. After her trip, I'm not sure if she intends to go back to Canada or immediately settle into what will probably be a very comfortable life in the UK. Positively, I recently managed to get the kids to see their doctor. She provided me with a wealth of helpful information and guidance. She emphasized that the most crucial elements for their adjustment were time and open communication. I would be dishonest if I claimed not to be concerned, even if I am hopeful. I understand that it's very early, but they continue to act out frequently because they are still very unhappy about the whole situation. The fact that they are struggling to adapt to our new reality is obvious. My family has been a huge help over this whole ordeal. Things have already been a lot simpler when my mother showed up early last week as promised. Her cooking and time with the kids are enjoyable. I've been able to do other things because of her presence. As soon as the divorce is completed, I intend to appoint my sister-in-law and oldest brother as the children's legal guardians. They previously committed to assume that position if necessary and reside somewhat close by. This gives me a sense of calm. However, considering my considerably busier schedule and Emily's tardiness before her trip, I seriously doubt this will happen anytime soon. The entire procedure is now moving at a snail's pace. Making decisions regarding our family home has been one of the most difficult parts of this whole process. I'm leaning towards selling at this point after giving it a lot of consideration and discussing it with my family several times. Since Emily sold our SUV just before she left the country, she has already offered me somewhat more than half of the money. Given that I made a substantial 40% contribution to the purchase, my lawyer has stated that it was premature of her to sell the SUV before we had completed anything. In line with Emily's promise to give me more of the house, he believes I have good reason to ask for repayment elsewhere in our asset division. Given that I made between 65% and 70% of the down payment and monthly mortgage payments, receiving more than half seems reasonable. The family SUV was registered solely in her name, as I previously said. However, it's annoying because I paid for around 40% of everything. She sold it on her own. Over the past several weeks, I've discovered that my sedan is too small for the kids and awkward for my mom to get in and out of while doing errands. I'll have to exchange it for something bigger as a result. Emily has politely demanded that I retain the appliances and furniture. The least she can do. I guess there is a part of me that wishes we could remain in our existing house. Moving would definitely be best for us. Although Emily is just as likely to meddle in the future, I have a part of me hoping that this will help us prevent it, anywhere we may be. In order to reduce my commute and put us close to a reputable school, I've been searching for townhomes nearer to my workplace. My sisters, however, pointed out that relocating the children at this time would require them to switch schools and lose their friends, which would be yet another significant adjustment for them. We may perhaps relocate to a smaller, easier-to-manage home near our existing one. Regardless of the choice we choose, this would lessen my burden and enable the children to remain at the same school. It is enticing to think about a new house without Emily's memory. The placement of our current house is just another example of my short-sightedness and foolishness. Emily's commute was considerably easier because of its location than mine was. For a while, everything worked fine, because Emily's job was near to the kids' school in case they needed her during the day. However, because my workplace is somewhat distant, all of this is now pointless. Emily's family has not contacted me, and to be honest, I have no desire to do so. Regarding Emily and Jake's future together, I don't want their relationship to end. She is less likely to interfere with ours the longer her existence is stable. However, I find comfort in the fact that she is still ignorant of Jake's past of adultery. Eleanor and I both agree that there is no moral need to alert her of Jake's character. I've made it a point to visit Eleanor frequently. Her family doesn't support her as much as mine does. Even though it's obvious that neither Jake nor Eleanor want to make amends, her immediate family is enchanted by Jake's seeming affluence and feels she should do whatever it takes to keep him. There were comments and a response. One of her friends said that her actions astonished and disappointed him. How could she have known Emily was already visiting a divorce lawyer? Additionally, they were aware that items were being sent to the UK. The two friends who came up to me learned about my wife's visit to a divorce lawyer in late August or early September from a third acquaintance. Only the two women that approached me were informed by this third buddy. After Emily had already left the house, she became aware of all of this. I haven't had a direct conversation with this third buddy. Second commenter, I'm really sorry, dude. No one is worthy of tremendous suffering. For 15 years, I have carried it with me. I hope you find someone fresh and are lucky than I am. The lowest of the low are those who cheat. She is leaving her own children behind for his. There was not a soul to be found. I guess that is what it is. I'm still in disbelief, because cheating is one thing. In this way, she is abandoning her kids. Her ability to achieve this is something I never would have thought possible. OP provides some information. What would happen to Emily if she made the decision to return and seek to regain her parental rights over her children? In the event that Emily returns in a few years and requests visiting privileges, she will be able to pay child support. She would probably be given some access. I would, however, continue to have full custody as the primary caregiver. Naturally, she runs the risk of accruing a substantial criminal record while she is overseas. Should that occur? I acknowledge that I could be overly hopeful and optimistic, but it would probably prevent her from having any contact with the kids. I hope that if it comes down to it, the kids would expressly say that they would rather stay with me since their opinions are also taken into account. Naturally, this is only a general overview of what I believe might occur. Different information might lead to different results. In order to avoid having to go down that path, I'm hoping my wife remains away. I'm sorry. Response to Emily's choice to distance herself from their own kids and her willingness to interact with Jake's kids. Yes, one of my sisters-in-law said, "I'm still in shock at how easily she can just walk away." She's going on her broom to realize her ambition of being the evil stepmother of some impoverished kids. The fact that Eleanor's kids, who are a little older than me, 11 to 14, will probably try their hardest to make Emily's life as terrible as possible is a tiny comfort.